Hi, Fan. Thank you so much for joining me today for our product summit. We're going to be talking about managing user feedback at scale in hypergrowth companies. I'll introduce myself. I'm Lily. I'm VP of Marketing here at Chattermill, and I'm delighted that you guys are going to be spending some time with us and imparting your expertise and your thoughts on this topic. So if we could start with Aurelie, introducing yourself, please.
Yes, thank you for having us there. So I'm Aurelie, as you mentioned, and I'm working at Qonto since almost 4 years now as a product marketing manager. So I've been on various topics, but what I will be discussing today is more so my most recent experience on client invoicing, which is a portion of our business banking product.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Yes, you've actually been a customer of ours for a while now, and we're delighted
Good.
that you're speaking with us. And then, Fan, you're not a customer, but we've met before in Amsterdam. It's really nice. Welcome. And if you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Lily. Yeah, so I'm Fan. I'm a product manager, mostly working on enterprise and administrative side. I've worked at companies like Atlassian, Miro, and then most recently I'm working at a company called Hex. So excited to share from different stages of company growth too.
And congratulations, because that's a pretty new position you've
Yes, it's
started.
been 1 week.
All right, that's great. So to kick us off, just want to sort of zoom in on the hypergrowth in in our topic. So I'm in marketing, so I know how I would feel about hypergrowth, right? Amazing. But maybe in products, Fan, you might feel differently. Like just surge of
Yeah.
user volume. So how do both of you feel about the hypergrowth in this situation? Fan, maybe we start with you.
Definitely. And I think it is a very exciting moment for the company to hit product market fit and have that surge of users. And especially for me, from more of the enterprise and administrative side, I get a little bit nervous because I want to make sure the product is set up to scale, either in terms of performance or, user management, all those types of functionalities that are a little bit on the back end. If those aren't done correctly, then the user experience can suffer from it. So I get a little bit nervous in addition to being
Right. Okay. So we've got nervous excitement right, from
yeah.
product.
Yeah. And like the roles that I've been very practically focused. So I hear that and I'm like, oh, have we prepared the product to kind of support this type of growth?
Right. What about you, Aurelie, in as a product marketing manager?
I think it's also exciting in a way, but can be overwhelming because you start to have all those different types of user joining you. And we are working a lot on defining like competitive positioning, product market fit, like ideal customer profiles, and sometimes filtering through the noise and focusing on the right users and not all the one you gathered through various specific like size, channel, segments can be a bit overwhelming because then you need to basically choose. And when you choose, you need to accept to not be focusing on some opportunities you identified and then ensure alignment across teams. Because what we have witnessed with this like hyper growth is that sometimes sales, product, even us, were not really aligned in the end on what we were trying to do and which audience we were aiming towards. So it can be a bit overwhelming and require a lot of like alignments for us to be sure the product is suited to actually fill the needs of the user we are sharing to the rest of the company.
I deeply relate with that sense of like sometimes it's really hard because in marketing you kind of want to sell to everyone. Like, why wouldn't everyone want to use our products? But sometimes you just got to make tough choices and really focus on your ideal customer profiles, as you were saying, and make sure that you have the best products and the best messaging for those people. And it does mean that you're not for some people, right? And you've just got to tough choices, right? So I think one of you said the word surge, like when those years or periods of hypergrowth where there's a surge, a big volume of new users coming onto the platform. So how do you handle that? And is there been like a moment in, as you're in different companies and different processes and you just say, wow, this is actually moving too fast right now? Have you felt that before? Maybe Aurelie for you first?
Yeah, indeed, we did. So especially on this particular product I've been mentioning, client invoicing, we've launched it really usually as part of a regulatory change related to electronic invoicing. So we just started with a like most valuable product like perspective with a no specific invoice type, no quote, no matching, really pretty basic and manual. Everything was super manual. And we knew like it was important for users, but we didn't realize how much. So basically the moment we released it, like feedback started flooding from sales rep, from customer support, from in-app surveys and everything. And actually we were like, okay, we were not prepared for this. We didn't realize that people would actually expect that much from us. And at this stage, we didn't know how to, handle and prioritize the feedback we were receiving from all the fronts.
Yeah, and that's really hard, right? Because you can sort of preempt where people are going to log in and they're going to go through this experience, etc. But then it's like, yeah, it's the invoicing bit. That's where you get caught, right? What about you, Fan? Any wow moments?
Yeah, I think similarly, a lot of times we want to deliver value to customers as quickly as possible. So some of the capabilities that support scale and growth with like automation are fast follows, I will say. So, if it's enabling a feature or doing something, a lot of that is manual in the beginning. So we'll say, oh, like contact support will enable it for you, or, upload a CSV and you'll be able to, have new users appear in your product. Where that falls short is like the scale and the growth of customers who are using that. And then we realize that, we have to really think about the level of usage when we're kind of building products, and then enable, scale and automation as quickly as possible if there is a lot of traction. So yeah, otherwise there could be situations where the feature even has to be turned off because, we can't scale it up fast enough.
Yeah. Do you think there's any difference between like the expectation on a B2B versus maybe, and you're both quite B2B, but do you think like, because you work on,
Yeah.
do you think like
Yes.
the expectation would be different?
I think for like the user who is using the product, they shouldn't know any of this happening. They should just have a delightful experience. But for someone who is administering the product, a lot of times they're okay with a certain level of manual processes. But then when you're saying, oh, you have to manage thousands of users manually and we don't have bulk actions or things like that, they get upset because it's not their only job to kind of administer your tool. So I would say that it's like a mix. They're okay with kind of this sort of manual intervention in the beginning, but we better have the capabilities to kind of automate those processes pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I guess I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here with you, Fan, but because I've been in a position when I've had to like market to marketers, and like at Miro, I suppose you're creating products that it's quite normal and common for PMs to use Miro.
Yeah.
So did you feel like they could see through us?
Yeah, I think on like the core use case side, like we definitely, had a lot of testing with our own users, and like a lot of customers love the product from that perspective. I think that when you run into dealing with like the buyer persona or like IT administrators, that's a whole nother, well, it's a whole nother conversation, and they care about like vastly different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just looking then at, okay, you're in hypergrowth, you get a massive surge of users, and that brings a lot of feedback, like you were saying, Aurelie, that you've sort of inundated, not just from users, but also internal as well, which might be even more painful sometimes. So what challenges have you had in managing that feedback? Obviously, the volumes and the sources, like where is it coming from, all at the same time, and what have been the challenges and then like pitfalls that you've sort of fallen into, really?
Yeah, but I think there's two sides of it indeed. So initially we started handling like the feedback super manually. Like we were jotting down everything we were seeing or finding on Notion in the table with the segments, country, etc., to really try to make sense of what we were seeing. So of course we couldn't keep up with everything that was happening everywhere. So not only we were missing a lot of like critical information in there, but actually we were really starting to introduce a bias because we were overlooking the recurring pains or the insight that really didn't immediately fit into expectation we had. So I think it's really a matter also, to your point you were just discussing before, of positioning. So if you don't really define where you want to go, what you want to do with it, and which audience you are targeting, then you are very tempted to just look at the things you personally believe in and then introduce bias in the way you you're looking at information. And yeah, this method basically introduces the fact that we're starting to capture things that were confirming our own ideas and dismissing the rest of the feedback as non-representative. And as we focus on improving the product, we initially really tended to concentrate on negative feedback. And now we rely on it more to define, refine, or even confirm the ideal customer profile we have been able to sketch out before.
I love that. And that the idea that, you know, obviously you want to look at the negative feedback, right? You don't want to gloss over that. You don't want to be as biased, that you wouldn't look into that. But so many companies, and we're always going on about positive feedback because we see with our customers, a lot of people just ignore the good things that people are saying. And even last week we had an event, we were talking to customers and they were saying, like, because sometimes people might not give you good feedback, but they might stop doing the wrong behavior, so like there's just looking at all those indicators around, like, because you might be having an impact that you can't expect. It's like, yeah, you're doing great, expectation, right? But there are other behaviors that you can monitor to see if you're having an effect. And I love that you're looking at both negative and positive to inform like your product roadmaps.
And we do get positive feedback now, which is awesome. Like we set up this Slack channel, maybe I'll mention this a bit later on, but like we set up this Slack channel to actually see feedback we receive. And we can totally see the difference now in the type of feedback we receive. And some people just say, I'm super happy with it, whether in-app surveys or even like just pilot or like more public-facing channels. So I think for the team, that's the type of feedback I'm also trying to share and convey, because we always hear about what's wrong, what we need to improve, what feature is missing. But then this type of feedback, actually, like we really try to even like interview the people or try to define them as actual material for the website to get testimonies and everything. So positive feedback is also very important for us now.
That's awesome. That's really great. How about you, Feng, in terms of pitfalls that
Yeah. No, I really like what you said as well about positive feedbacks. I think as a PM, you really just hear data points all the time. And I would say at some of the places that I've worked at weren't as in like mature in their processes. Like PMs were definitely just like primary points of contact to be given feedback directly from like customer facing teams. And of course it doesn't scale well as the product team grows, as go to market teams grow. You can't really maintain a one-on-one relationship. And I would say teams then start to try to automate the processes within their own teams. And then, you have multiple processes. So I would say it's like really trying to understand like what works for not just product teams, but, product marketing, go to market. We all rely on the same sources of feedback, but for different purposes. Even when we tried to have like a centralized repository, it was hard to maintain consistency, etc. So I wouldn't say that there's been like a perfect process that has been able to kind of capture everything and make everybody happy with it.
And to be honest, each company will want different things, right?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
talked about tools like Notion, like Slack, like different companies will react to these kinds of repositories and actions. It's just identifying what works for the dynamic of each company as well. And each product as well will be different. There'll be different cycles, etc. So that's really interesting. And I wonder like if I will ever be able to do this, but I would love to just map out like starting with spreadsheets, right? And then you move on to some level of automation.
Many spreadsheets.
And then it's on Slack. So you feel like it's a bit snazzier now. And then it's on Notion and you feel like, but then there's the AI element that can help you scale. Yeah. Which brings me on to like the scaling of this feedback. So once you've tested a few things that feel quite manual, like what do you set up? Like how do you automate? How do you distribute the information? I don't know, maybe we start with you on this one, Aurelie, as well. So how do you create like the right analytics process and then distribute that to the right people? Have you cracked that yet?
But I think we have the help of Chattermill on that front. So I think I will not sell too much your product, but it was really helpful first to be able to centralize feedback. So we worked a lot with our BI team to be able to gather different sources, whether like in-app surveys, just the tool Refiner we use, or as I was mentioning, Trustpilot. Like we really have a lot of sources as well, like calls that get transcribed through Mojo, etc. So really so many different tools we are using internally. And we already had the first challenge of surfacing feedback for ourselves. So being able to see it and access it in a structured way. So with some refinement and maybe be able to access it via keywords, for example. So right now, thanks to Chattermill, we do get those keywords analysis and use to identify some trends and filter the noise. So a really small example, but in French, like facture, we can have like receipt, invoice, like there's so many ways we could mention it. And reçu, which can mean receive or receipt, actually was getting filtered the same way. So when I was looking for people with missing receipt, actually I was seeing people who didn't have received the transfer. So at some point as well, we had to filter this information and be able to get it more reliable for us to actually look at the insights and be able to share them. So now we really have set up thanks to this ability to get like a more consolidated approach to feedback from the sources with some like language treatment, if I may. Then we have some dashboard where we can also track like the last input or insight we've been receiving, how sentiment evolved over time. And that's why we also get to have the Slack channel or Notion pages, because you have, and I can't stress this enough, but you have to centralize and share the same source of truth. Because then you do get only a partial vision, a partial angle of customer feedback. And of course, sales do not get the same type of feedback that we receive in-app after 3 months of people getting onboarded. So I think it's really the most helpful part is connecting to different sources, treating it in the right way, and being able then to surface it to the right channels that people use on a daily basis. So you really have the same approach and surfacement of feedback.
That's yeah. How about you, Fan?
Yeah, I would say we're probably not, at least in my experience, as advanced in the automated and AI-based solutions, but we had just started to kind of use that to aggregate customer feedback. Previously, we were using some other tools where, all the feedback was dumped in and kind of product managers had to go in and manually categorize or say, okay, this is related to my domain area. A lot of that slips through the cracks in the day-to-day work. So I think that these types of solutions just really help like synthesize by topic. So, if I'm working on a certain domain, I can go in and say, let me just look at the tickets or Salesforce feedback or, manual things that people have inputted. And I can then go and follow up with customers, follow up with customer facing teams and like get that firsthand customer research because, nothing really replaces a customer interview and that type of work, but at least this helps the discovery and the sourcing and makes that a lot easier and gives some quantifiable like backing to, okay, well, there's, a certain number of requests. That's why we're going and following up on this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I'll just switch gears a little because I'm just conscious of time. And there's one topic that I really want to get into and get your takes. So hypergrowth, obviously you're excited, lots going on, lots of new users. And then what's next, right? Because there's always the next feature, the next product, what goes into the roadmap, right? And I imagine to a large extent, product teams like live and die by what's on the roadmap and how do you prioritize? Who do you listen to? Is it the vision from the CEO? Is it the feedback from the users? Is it what you want to, the customer segments that you want to win as well that you haven't yet, right? So how do you prioritize, like how do you go about doing this? Okay, Leah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I will, but I guess Feng will there be the most experienced one on balancing feedback because in a way, for road mapping is anyway the main focus for PMs. So we support them in that sense. But anyway, it's always a fine line between like quick wins, investing in the long game. We do have the overall OKR approach that is a bit more top down, even though we contribute to it. But then we don't always have, what we've learned that we don't always have to choose between those like short fix and actual long-term goals reaching. Because, for example, very recently, what we've been seeing a lot in terms of feedback was clients being complaining a bit about how cumbersome it was to create a new professional client because you have to add siren, VAT numbers, like very like difficult to have information that require a lot of back and forth with our own clients. Actually, by just doing this fixed and enabling them to search through public database from the product. We've reduced the time to create a client from whatever, 2 minutes 35 to actually few seconds. It's a short-term fix from existing users, because usually that's the one we hear the most feedback of. It's not really new users that's going to be, hey, I would like this awesome feature to convert me to your product. It's usually the one already using it. But then actually this short-term fix that we've done from our clients, helped us a lot to improve activation rate. Because if it's your first time using the product, you're going to spend seconds doing it. You're going to discover you can just search for your client versus in another tool where you have to do everything manually. So actually we do get to balance a bit as well those run tasks, as we call them, that don't take a lot of bandwidth, actually thinking of the bigger picture and how we can help us reach our goal, OKRs related to usage, upsell, or whatever it is.
Nice. And then you still find the ability to sort of look at the customer feedback and then be guided by that up to a point, I suppose.
Of course, anyway, what we use, even in sales training or any meeting to convince people, is usually verbatim. So we really try not to use a persona, for example, anymore. We actually take real customer profile, like Lily, fan. Hey, she's that as much, I don't know, using invoicing, or she's not, or she's in this country with this activity. And it's much more helpful to actually raise those verbatim. So really, sometimes I'm seeing some being surfaced on Slack or anything. I'm like, okay, that one, I know where I'm going to use it exactly, because that's what we need, voice of customer, to convince our colleagues that it's real people behind it. And so even then we can go back to a customer call and make it played to our sales team or anyone. Actually, it's very helpful. I think you mentioned positive feedback before. I think that's what we need to lean towards, to really motivate them and show them. Because when you scale, now I joined Qonto, we're 400. Now we're almost 2,000 soon. You need actually to connect back to the user to make people get the sense of what they're achieving and how it's helpful for their user.
Yeah, that's great. So if I was to sort of pick out a couple of things from what you said there, just looking at the short fixes that can have a big impact in the roadmap, in the customer experience, and also still meeting your company vision goals. So not getting distracted by little things that actually don't match up with what you've decided is your company vision. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. How about you, Fan?
Yeah, this is $1 million question, I think. And road mapping is definitely a lot more of an art than a science, I will say. And there's a lot of other factors that go into it. I think there's company maturity level that I want to just mention briefly. I think if you're at a company that's a little bit more established and mature in the processes, there's a strong vision of where you want the product to go. Those are opportunities. I think even if you have these short-term customer requests, you can bring the customer along your journey. Even if you say, no, we're not going to do this, you have a vision to just try to sell to them. I would say if it's a potentially, younger startup with a product that is still new in the market, that's when you have your large customers and you are reacting a little bit more to what their requests are. If they compose 10% of your ARR, you will probably do what they ask you to do. But those customers can then help you kind of, again, create a profile and say, oh, well, if this is the, target profile for these types of companies in this industry, then I still want to think about how to productize the solution in the long term, but it's not necessarily a bad thing to go and build something even one-off, as long as you remember, okay, we're still going to try to productize this so that every single customer can benefit from it. And it's not something that's a enablement, very manual process. So I would say that the company maturity factors into this as well. But ideally, short versus long term, they shouldn't really be competing priorities, and they should kind of be marching towards the same goal. And there is not as big of a disconnect. Because in that case, it's we should probably revisit some more high level strategy.
Probably have bigger problems if those two.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point. Fan, Aurelie, I think we're at time, and I'm so grateful for your input, for your expertise shared. I'd invite anyone who's listening to follow Aurelie and Fan on LinkedIn, ask any questions. as follow-ups. Yes, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.